if you had to tell someone just sort of like a short summary about your IVF journey, what would that entail?
It sucked. It sucked. And for so long, it was crazy because I would be so quiet about it. And my friends knew and all that, but I was so embarrassed. And I think so many women are because you just, all my friends, and especially in a hockey wives room, I don't know what it's like in football. A lot of the girls are young when they have their babies. In hockey, the boys get married really early, and I was in my 30s and we were not married and we were not, pregnant. And all my girlfriends, I helped raise their kids in the hockey wives room. So by the time I came rolling around 45 with a surrogate, wait, where'd y'all go? This is crazy. So there was a lot of embarrassment. You felt like maybe people in my life didn't understand. It wasn't the case. My girlfriends were amazing. But I always say to people, even if your friends have never gone through IVF, surrogacy, adoption, just talk to them, because you can't keep all this stuff in. And sometimes it's hard for your partner to relate. My husband's from a small town in Canada. Not a lot of people, like before we were really vocal about surrogacy and IVF and it not working, were very vocal about it. And the first time I was like, I'm going to say something on air because this is crazy. He was like, please don't. And he was kind of like, oh my gosh, the day I went public with how much it sucked and we weren't having success, so many people reached out to us and was like, oh my God, we've gone through this too. So it was kind of like therapy.
It is strange that when you start to discuss the different aspects of trying to build a family, loss, IVF, infertility to any degree,
yeah,
that people start like coming out of the woodwork to be like, that happened to us. Like I had multiple people after our loss who were like, we had 3 losses before we had our first kid. We experienced this, we experienced that. And it's one of those things that makes you so sad because obviously not necessarily a club you want to be a part of, but then you realize how many people have experienced that and how many people are sitting in silence with it. And it just sort of like almost stings a little to realize that we're all carrying this degree of trauma, really, or like not having a positive experience and then just not talking about it as if it's something that we should be like ashamed of, that doesn't need to be talked about, that's too personal to talk about. But like, if we're all experiencing it, is it really that personal?
Right.
I am so grateful that you have these conversations, because I think that you're opening up the opportunity for other women to realize that it's not just them, that someone who is in the public eye, who's as successful as you are, who's clearly like a fit, healthy individual, that it can happen to anyone, that you can experience infertility. You were still working that whole time through IVF. Do you feel like that was a good distraction?
It was honestly the distraction I needed. I mean, I even had my whole cervical cancer journey during football. That was a big reason why we weren't able to get pregnant. That was a huge reason why we had to do surrogacy. But for me, being busy and doing what I love, being on that football field is such a distraction, and it's something I need to function. You take me off, I'm a hot mess express. I got to be busy. Working, staying busy, trying to be the best version of me was what helped me the most.
But then on top of it, you have taken it upon yourself to encourage other women to make sure that they are getting themselves checked regularly. So
yes,
you have now taken an experience in your life and are again speaking about it and not sweeping it under the rug or pretending like it's something that you should be embarrassed about. And you're using it to encourage other women to make sure that they are pursuing the proper medical care and maintenance that we all need to prioritize.
It was crazy. I found out when I went public with it, and I went public with it at Super Bowl. Somebody did a sit down interview with me and they were like, hey, how was your year? And I was like, holy shit, listen to this.
Let me tell you.
It all started at week 3. So I just told her, and then I woke up that Monday morning and it was everywhere about the percentages of women that get diagnosed with it, how you shouldn't die of it because it is something that's curable if you find it early. It was wild. I was getting text messages from powerful men in the NFL saying, thank you for doing this. My mother, my wife, my aunt, my cousin, they don't go to the doctor and they needed to hear this. So yeah, it was for the greater good to just kind of get it out there. when you work with all men and you're, the only female out of 30 guys that travel every week to a game, it's not something you want to talk about with your cervix, Hey, pass the pasta. My cervix just got taken out. How about that Philly offense, So.
Well, again, thank you for having those conversations.
Sure.
The other thing that you have already said today, that you've been outspoken about is how you guys ended up with your son via surrogacy. At what point did you decide that was the route for you guys?
We decided COVID, Easter. We're always, because we didn't have kids, we always have a big Easter with my girlfriend, who was the wife of our goalie. And she was so great and she had a big family. So she always had us over for Easter, and she had all the boys over for Thanksgiving. So we were so used to doing everything with everybody's kids on the team. And we just were all isolated, and none of us were together. And we're like, this sucks. And I'm not going to get pregnant. And I know surrogacy sounds off and weird, but let's just fucking do it. And so we just decided to do it. And it was a crazy, emotional, wild ride. We ended up, losing. There was a big loss, which I don't think we were prepared for. I think we thought when we went into it, we were like, yeah, it's going to be successful right away. What are you talking about? We'll put 2 in, we'll get 2 or we'll get 1. We got nothing. And I didn't have a lot to start out with. So that was really, really hard. I didn't deal with that very well. I pretty much kind of lost it for a bit. My husband dealt with grief really well. I didn't process it the way I was supposed to. Taught me a big lesson about that. And then that led us to our angel, and that was our surrogate. And she was so incredible. She had done it before. She really guided us through it. The woman whose company that placed us with our surrogate was so wonderful, so much so that I've actually recommended her to other people where they've had babies through her. And if you are with the right group and the right people, and you ask the right questions, and I've even have somebody via broadcasting that had a baby before we did in surrogacy, and we were asking him all about the delivery. You just got to ask questions. You got to be open. You got to be honest with yourself and your partner, and then it'll work out the way you need it to. You can't go about it just being like, I'm going to deal with this like this and not talk to people. You got to talk. You got to ask questions.
And so you obviously have been a mom now for, is Mac a year and a half?
A year and a half, yeah.
How's it going?
It's wild, but it's getting crazier and crazier of like, man, he's coming into his own, Like, when do you notice that they start coming into your own? This is my first time. Like, when do they start developing their little like cuckoo personalities?
I would say I would say between like 15, 18 months, I feel like they start to sort of become their own person, where like they're laughing at specific, like you can tell what they find funny. Yeah. You can tell their sense of humor. Yeah. Like, I have explained all 3 of our girls so far have different senses of humor. Wyatt wants to be funny. Ellie is funny and doesn't understand why you're laughing. And Bennett is funny and knows it. So like it really pans out right around that like 15, 18 month, you start to see them sort of amp up.
That's a good way to say it.
But it is, I think like you guys are in the sweet spot of, which I'm sure not everything is rainbows and butterflies. I want to be abundantly clear on that.
Yeah. The molars, man, that is crazy. Oh, that poor thing.
It's not right.
He turned into a different person. I'm like, are you okay? What happened?
Yes. They get a little like possessed.
Wow.
Like you're like, it wasn't, mine wasn't. How do we reset to factory settings? What is happening?
That's a good.
Yeah. Boop, boop. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Because there are just certain milestones, and the molars are definitely one of them, where you're like, I know you're not okay, but we gotta recenter ourselves here.